I wouldn't give myself any business leadership advice at all. I still think as an industry we're rubbish at this. You just end up with never having a dev team free to do anything apart from adopt new regulation. Every task we do, we think, is that as simple as possible for the client? If you want to be seen as a fun entertainment company, you need to have that environment and that mindset in the office.
Hello everyone, welcome back. This is iGaming History, episode 3. I'm joined today by Rob Fell, which I very fondly say about Rob Rising, CEO of RiskCherry. Rob, absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much for having me. An honor to be invited. Very much look forward to chatting to you over the next hour about my career and about what we're doing with RiskCherry. So thank you very much.
Rob, the honor is mine. Before we go into details, for anybody who doesn't know you yet, which is surprising, to be honest, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, I've been in the iGaming and gambling space for over 15 years now. I started back at Paddy Power. Then I moved out to Gibraltar, spent some time with Garlic Coral, with Lottoland, joined the GVC group at the time when GVC were acquiring many different businesses. Moved on to NetEnt, spent a little bit of time at White Hat Gaming, White Hat Studios, and have then been involved with RiskCherry over the last 4 years. So I've been around the industry, and I think I've seen everything from the B2B side, the B2C side, the service supplier side, and done a little bit of everything over my 15 plus years.
All right, very rich experience. Rob, you are the only person in iGaming I know who has a military background. So how does a man who once wore British Army end up in this place?
Well, yeah, good question. There's actually a few of us, and there's a little bit of a community of people who've served in the military, and not just the British military. So there is a sort of a network of us, and we help each other out with things and talk a lot. But I left the British Army during the time of the global financial crisis back in 2008. Didn't really know what I was doing with my life at that point. I'd come from an officer background in the army, leadership roles, and working with communication and intelligence. So moving into sort of a IT and technical background of a role was something that was clear. I went on and did product and operations roles and had a few different roles before seeing an article in a sort of a computer magazine, Computer Weekly, I think it was. And it was the then CTO of Paddy Power saying, we're growing the tech team from 140 people to 400 people over the next 18 months. LinkedIn was new. I messaged Mike and said, hi, Mike, let's have a chat. We had a chat. I then found a guy that I went to school with, who was a year above me at school in the UK, who was working for Paddy Power on the bingo team. I messaged Jamie. Jamie and I talked. I then met Jamie's boss, Sarah Bateson. I then met Christopher Coyne that week. And everything happened very quickly. And I went from basically seeing Paddy Power on LinkedIn, and there's that article, LinkedIn messages, message Jamie, to then having a role within a week at Paddy Power in the bingo team. So it was a very kind of coincidental entry into the gambling and gaming space through connections, through early networking, which is obviously something I've used very much since then. So yeah, very much an odd journey, but going from leadership roles in products and technology into some consulting into gambling and gaming seemed to make sense.
Yes, a very interesting journey indeed. When you joined Paddy Power, what did the industry look like from the inside? Is there anything that struck you immediately?
Well, I think the first thing to note is, I joined the bingo team. Up until that point, I had never placed a bet in a betting shop. I'd never placed a sports bet. I'd never gambled online. And so for me, it was a whole new world. And I joined Paddy Power prior to UK Gambling Commission regulations. We were live in the UK with an Ireland with a bingo product. At that point, we were Paddy Power non-retail. So the whole online division was called non-retail. We were stealing and borrowing developers, BI analysts from other parts of the team. And it was very much a small sort of community of us who were building the online product. So it was all new to me. And it was a case of figuring out stuff as you went. And I taught myself SQL. We used to log in from the UK into servers in Ireland and use Hyperion Brio to basically pull reports on the daily trading activity. And we were managing all these things, and we allowed customers to type in whatever mobile number they wanted onto a reg form. So we'd sit there and we'd write like left strip, right strip, transpose, and making up SQL queries to basically get mobile numbers out, to then to be able to manually upload them into primitive SMS tooling that was existing. So it was very much a figure out stuff as you go, and learn everything, and basically do what you thought was the right thing. So it was very kind of Wild West back then. And I guess as we go through this conversation, we'll talk about regulation coming in, how do those things change, and where are we as an industry now. But yeah, joining, it was very much a teach yourself things and adapt to the environment around you, really.
Do you remember the first time you thought, this is it, I am in the right place?
Yeah, so I think that there's a number of examples that I could draw on here where I thought that, but actually one thing that really, really captured me, and is something that stuck through the industry with me, is I was probably a month, 2 months for that first role with Paddy Power. And obviously all the discussions we have now around player protection, around modeling of responsible gambling behavior and markers of harm and all of those things, none of that was being talked about back in 2011, really. And I remember coming into the office one morning, and we were massively up, and we at that point we were seeing a GGR of 42,000 euros a month was our GGR at that point. And so in one day we saw GGR of like 20,000 euros, and obviously there was a red flag of like, why have we had such a good day? We started to dig into it, and it was a couple of us on the team, so it's myself, VIP manager and product manager, and there was this lady who had deposited on a debit card, added another bank account, then moved to a credit card. And we start to look at this, and the three of us sat there and we said, this isn't right. And like I said before, LinkedIn was in its infancy back then. So we searched for this lady on LinkedIn. We then found her business via Company's House in the UK. So we searched for her name. We found her business, and she was effectively a childminder, a nanny in a very small town in the southwest of the UK, which isn't very affluent. And we all looked at each other and said, this is wrong. And so we made a decision as a business to refund to her the deposit she had made on those debit cards, refund that, cancel the credit cards. And then someone had the VIP manager called her and said, look, we think you're playing way beyond your means. We don't think this is right. And this is way ahead of these things coming in from regulators, from all these discussions. I'm sure in other responsible businesses, similar things were happening, but this was very much on our kind of, we led this. I was a bingo operations exec on the team at the time, and with peers in the team, we decided to do this. And really that, I thought at that point, this is where I want to be. This is like, we're doing the right thing. Yes, we're offering an entertainment product. Yes, we are wanting people to come and deposit money to play bingo, to play slots, to play sports bets. But really, we are doing the right thing. And I've always had that mindset throughout. And I think that's really, really stuck with me when I think about compliance, regulation, KYC, and all those sorts of things. So that was kind of really the first point. I thought, I'm in the right place. I'm surrounded by good people who want to do the right thing for the customer, even though we're not being told by a regulator that we have to do it.
Mm-hmm. You've seen the industry grow for about 20 years, almost 20 years. Did we lose anything along the way? Did we lose this? Or...
Yeah, so I think to some degree we have lost this, and obviously I can't speak for all businesses, and I've been very privileged to have worked for small teams within large organizations for a lot of my career, and then in growing teams as well. And I think what I've seen that we've lost is back then, and talking about that first role with Paddy Pad Bingo, when it was myself, Jamie, Anna, Rich, Sarah, all sat there, and it was 5 or 6 of us sat in Bayswater in London, and we'd look at each other and say, okay, so we're going to put this live today. We're going to write this marketing copy. I would then log on at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, pull a load of data using Hyperion Bria. I'd segment it manually. I'd send half of it to Anna, who'd upload, and we'd send to like the general base would get this marketing campaign on Saturday morning. Una would then get a list as VIP manager of these customers to talk to and what to do and what promotions to do. And we were really, really agile, dynamic, flexible. And I think as entities such as Flutter, Entain, Betson Group, etc., Superbet have all grown, I think you've added layers and layers of bureaucracy to match the layers and layers of regulation and the complexity of working in many, many regulated markets with huge amounts of segmentation, automation of tools, etc. I think potentially that kind of agility and the ability to drive numbers on a daily basis in the right direction whilst doing the right thing, I think we've lost that as an industry, as the scale of it's grown, the complexity of regulated markets and all those things. So we were highly agile at that point, and able to influence the numbers in a very quick and positive way. And I think that's much harder now.
Is there any way for us to go back?
I think the use of AI and the tool sets that could be developed now will help us get back to that. And I think I genuinely think that a lot of the organizations are too sort of bloated, and too many people working and too many layers, too many managers managing managers. And I think if we remove some of those layers and go back to kind of first principles, and people start to do these things and interact with a tool that does this, and they can push this, and we can deploy this, obviously within the constraints that we have now, which are there and which are right. But I think we can go back to a way of being much more agile for sure.
Do you think there's a willingness to do this?
I would say from some people within an organization, there absolutely will be. And I think if we look at the gambling industry versus some other sectors, there's a lot of similarities. And I think what we're seeing, especially with the rise of AI native businesses, and then the businesses who are then using AI, what we find is we'll have a bottom layer of people who are coming straight from college, who are inquisitive, wanting to do things, who will be like, I'm using ChatGPT for this, I'm using Claude for this, I'm building agentic bits and pieces, I'm doing this as my side project. You'll have the top level of the shareholders and some of the C-suite who think they understand it and think they want to buy in and do these things, and it absolutely makes sense because they'll deliver more value. But then you've got this kind of fat middle layer of like, one of my sort of old school friends calls it the frozen middle, and you've got all these layers of management, and they're not incentivized to do this really. As long as targets are being hit, as long as stuff's being done, they don't want the bother of implementing all this new stuff. They don't want the risk of those roles becoming redundant. They want a nice easy life and to get stuff done. I think unless we break that, and the kind of the frozen middle is unfrozen, then I think we're stuck in this place. I think the AI native businesses that really, really believe in this, do it, and deliver a fully AI native business will succeed. And the ones who are left with this frozen middle will start to die off, will be acquired, will not be able to operate anymore. And I think we're going to see that across all sectors. And I think the gambling industry is no different.
You've been in high-level positions for quite some time, and you have a proven track record of excellent leadership. If you could go back 10 years ago, when you first stepped into an executive role, what advice would you give yourself?
Good question. And so I wouldn't give myself any business leadership advice at all, directly. I fell into the trap of thinking that I needed to work every hour, that a work-life balance, and I don't really like that term, was sort of unnecessary. And I basically neglected myself for many, many years. And I've spoken on other podcasts and been quite vocal on LinkedIn around a transformation that I've gone through over the last 2.5 years. So my advice to myself when I stepped into these types of roles is be kind to yourself, give yourself time to keep your fitness up, to not eat rubbish food, to not drink alcohol every night of the week, to not feel like you need to go to every party, dinner, event, at every show and be out till 4 o'clock in the morning. And I think I could have been a much better manager, leader, more successful over a number of years if I had not gone to the excesses of the hours working, of the dinners, of the drinking, of all of that sort of thing. So I think you need that. You need to have the balance right. And anyone moving into a leadership role or starting up their own business or whatever it might be, yes, there are huge pressures. Yes, you need to work hard. Yes, there will be long hours, but block your calendar for an hour and a half every second day to go to the gym. Make sure you walk to the office, drink the water, get your nutrition right, do all of those things, get a coach if you need to, and focus on yourself, and the work results will become much better and you'll be a much better person for it. So that's the advice I'd give myself.
I have to agree with you wholeheartedly because I have been in this situation. I've also been at work 24/7, weekends, blast it all out, eat terrible food, be in poor shape. Then you have this fog in your head. You walk with the fog and you have no idea what's going on. I did get a personal trainer as well. It's been like a couple of months, but you feel like a new man.
100%.
It's a totally different lifestyle.
Yeah.
Could you go back through what you think have been the most important chapters in some of your previous roles and what you learned from them?
Yeah. So I think there's a few key things to pull out here. And I've been fortunate enough to work for some of the largest organizations in the gambling sector, especially in sort of Europe and the US. I have also been through a lot of changes with those organizations, whether that be on the buy side or the sell side of M&A, and then what happens after that. So I think some of the things that I learned whilst I was at GVC, now Entain, was around the speed at which you can plan, implement and execute platform migrations, deliver synergies within a business, and do things in a sensible way in terms of rationalization of teams. So how do you make them, when one large organization acquires another large organization, how do you map those two things together in the best possible way that drives growth for the shareholders, that drives that business forward, that does the right things, but doesn't instantly come in and just go, 2,000 people have lost their jobs overnight. It does it in a sensible way to make sure that there's a sustainable business and that the right people are supported and things happen. I think GVC at the time when we acquired various different businesses, and there was obviously the migration of the sporting bet platforms onto the old bwin Party platform. Then there was elaborate Coral acquisition. There were some side acquisitions of Cozy and Crystal Bet, etc. But it was all about how do these businesses and how do the people and teams complement and supplement each other to make sure things are done in the right way. And yes, of course, there were some casualties over time during that period, but everything was done in a really right way. And I learned a lot there from how people like Shai Segev planned and thought, and how we delivered the product and technology and operations to make sure that everything came together in a nice way. I then moved on and worked for NetEnt, and at NetEnt we acquired Red Tiger, and then we were acquired by Evolution. And during that time, prior to the Evolution acquisition, we went through some huge changes with that NetEnt group, and the NetEnt group was built for something that had previously existed and was very, very bloated in certain areas. And I think the thing that it taught me the most was going through those painful times of making people redundant and of having to rationalize teams. And no matter what level you are in the organization or where you are, it's a terrible and tough time for anybody. And for me personally, as a manager, as a leader, those times taught me how to do these things. Yes, sometimes they will be necessary in a business, and the market does change and dynamics change, and these things sometimes are unfortunately needed. But it taught me how to interact with people, how to do these things, not just from a HR and legal and finance perspective, but from that personal relationship. And the restructuring and reorganization of a team is a painful experience, but I learned a lot from it. And then I've taken that through into when we're now building this organization, how do we make sure that we build things in a lean, scalable way, that we don't become bloated, that we don't ever need to be in that we're doing things in a sensible way, and you get taught those things. So I think to generalize, what else did I learn? Two things really is, one, be authentic, like be yourself. I don't have a version of Rob at an event to a version of Rob at home to a version of Rob in the office with my team. I am just Rob, and I've always been me. And whether I'm talking about something on LinkedIn, talking to you, talking to someone we've hired today, I'm just me. And I think be authentic. And I think the other thing is always be available. And I learned this as a product manager, and I found my role as a product manager was to always be available to the development team that I was working with, always be available to the business stakeholders I was working with. And I found that be available at all times to your team. If someone asks you a question, no matter what it is, be able to give them a quick 30-second answer on Slack, on Google Chat, on whatever it might be. Always be available. And I think those two things are the two things that have really underpinned everything across my career. Be available, be authentic.
Can't it get overwhelming because so many people depend on you?
So I don't find that it does. I'm one of those people who, if I have one unread message on Slack, on Google Meet, or one unread email, I feel uneasy. So as soon as something comes in, I'm that person who will fire back a response immediately, no matter when it is, what it is, and that's with still giving myself time to go to bed early, spend time with my family, and all those sorts of things. But typically, I hate unread messages. If someone messaged me, I want to get back to them. If someone asks me a question, I want to be able to at least give them, I'm going to answer you tomorrow kind of answer. But no, I don't let it overwhelm me. I'd much rather be on top of everything available and able to chat.
My next question would have been about the leadership, but I think you expressed quite a lot in this previous answer. But maybe if I ask you, is there any way that the leadership style changes on the operator side versus when you're, like right now, for example, in a regulated testing lab, basically?
So I don't think the leadership style needs to change at all. I think there's obviously different skill sets that you learn and you adapt to, and you have different stakeholders, internal and external, that you need to manage, and maybe your communication style will change with those. But actually, I think the leadership style doesn't need to. And for me, I think I was very lucky to go straight from school and doing in the UK A levels into the British Army Officer Training Academy, and learning leadership and management through that from a very early age. And I think some of the things that I learned there and then adapted when I moved into the business world have stuck with me. And I think my leadership and management style has been pretty consistent, evolving and growing, but with the same core principles underpinning it throughout the whole time. So I think some things will obviously change, whether you're a B2B game supplier versus an affiliate versus an operator versus running a test lab. But the common thing will still be, and the common thread will still be running through it.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate this, the consistency and the transparency. And it's definitely something that many people say that it's missing in the industry. So we're very fortunate to have you here with us.
I don't think I'm the only one. I think I think there are some very good people in this industry who have a very similar mindset. So
when you look at your whole time dedicated to iGaming, are there any, like, if you look at the timeline, are there key moments that just pop up in your head and you think, okay, this changed the industry, this changed trajectory, this is where things made us work differently?
Yes, and I think I could obviously talk about regulation here. And you thankfully you shared this question with me, and I had a good think about this one. So I thought about regulation, and I thought about technology, and I thought about product, and I thought about people, and I thought about M&A, and I thought about cycles of all these things, and it was kind of what's the best way of me thinking about this, and what underpins a lot of that within the iGaming bit. So obviously there's a lot happened on the sports betting side. There's a lot that's happened with regulation, and obviously post UAGA, and then New Jersey going live, and other US states, and the UK, then Italy, and then other European markets regulating, and then LATAM, etc. That could easily talk about that. But for me, I wanted to bring us back to product, and kind of I spent a lot of my time on product and operations. And I think when I joined the industry, we were still in the world of downloadable casinos that someone would have to go on a desktop, on a laptop, get an exe file and get a Playtech download casino that you'd download from Gala Casino or wherever you were at, and you'd have to then basically go and download all the games individually. And I think that when I started, that was the norm. And so going from a download casino world into then very quickly after that, native apps for everything. And we went into this multi-app strategy where every brand out there would have there'd be a William Hill Vegas, there would be a Sky Vegas, there'd be William Hill would have a casino, there'd be Roller Casino that Paddy Power had alongside Paddy Power Games, alongside Paddy Power Casino, alongside Paddy Power Bingo. And every organization would have 10 apps in the App Store. And for a player, that's just massively confusing and stupid, really. And at the same time, we were then talking about mobile first, and we were talking about mobile first. So this is phase 2, was like native and mobile first together. And mobile first was designers and UX people with their 27-inch Macs screens, and they were designing for mobile supposedly, but still building stuff as a desktop site that you then might shrink down. And then we went into responsive design, and kind of this was phase 2, was this level of product, which you went from a download casino into this fake mobile first. And people were talking about this, and I remember the old CEO of Leo Vegas going, "This is the year of mobile." Then the next year, someone would talk at ICE about, "This is the year of mobile," and then it's like, now we're really mobile. And like we went through that period, and I think we learned a lot about product at that point, and about how to serve something better to a player, but we didn't quite get it right. And then we went into this whole death of Flash and the migration of Flash to HTML5. And I think this really gave game studios and casinos the point where you could use frameworks and libraries, and things could become a lot more lightweight. And I think at that point, then we really started to go into, actually, we can have portrait games on mobile that are HTML. We can have a casino lobby that is there that quickly interacts with this, and we can start to add some layers of interaction, and not just be someone comes to the front page, is placing a sports bet, then they get cross-sold to casino, then they might get this game where they have to tilt their phone to landscape, and then they want to go back to the sports bet. And so I think that was kind of the third phase, was really moving into this kind of mobile first with HTML games. And then we start to go, actually, we can start to build a proper experience. And then the fourth bit, and I still think as an industry we're rubbish at this, and there's some great companies bolting stuff on and doing the data and building solutions, but personalization. So phase 4 is we finally went from one size fits all of some player in the UK or Germany or Sweden logging into a casino seems the same thing as everyone else, and we went into one size doesn't fit all finally, and to varying degrees of success. So personalization came in. I think now we're moving into the AI world, and where we can start to really leverage tools to do these things in real time properly. So we've gone from a downloadable exe file on the casino to getting a bit better with multi-app strategy, to then building proper mobile products, to then adding some personalization. And I think now we're in a place where we can start to bring all of that together and deliver it a lot better. So that's kind of my journey over the last 15 years of iGaming, for sure.
Do you think that the product is ready? It needs to keep evolving.
It needs to keep evolving, and will keep evolving. And I think if I compare the iGaming space and casino front pages to wider e-commerce, and this has been the thing that's been my bugbear for 10 years, is I still believe that many brands, and there are some brands who do it well now and starting to do it well, but we are way behind wider e-commerce in terms of how we serve content to customers, to players, how we segment, how we personalize, how we use real-time data to make decisions and to give the right experience that a player wants on the front end. I still think we are way behind other e-commerce, and could do a lot more as an industry to do that. I think there's reasons why, and I think we're probably going to talk about those things in a moment. And there's a reason why these things haven't progressed to a level where I think they could be at.
Before we jump into this, because obviously regulation is an important thing in the industry, and it's what everybody talks about. Do you think that there was any point when regulation went from protecting the player, taking care of the player, to literally the enemy of innovation?
So I kind of have a bit of a mixed answer on this, and I believe, and obviously with seeing things from a B2C side, then B2B, and then with the role that I'm doing now, I've had a great sort of oversight in the various different requirements that are put on an operator, on a game supplier, from a test lab onto various different parts of this. So I've got a really good sort of oversight of this. I don't think there's been some inconsistencies in terms of how different regulators have adopted different standards, and for various different reasons why they have done that. Some of it is in some regards, and I'll be brutally honest here, a lack of understanding, and there are reasons for that. Some regulators have wanted to rush things through to generate taxes, and taxes may be a higher priority to them than player protection, and they may be hiding under a player protection guise to push things through. And in those instances, civil servants in various ministries of finance, ministries of justice, newly formed regulatory bodies go, we'll copy a bit of the UK, we'll copy a bit of Italy, we'll look at what New Jersey have done, let's put all these things together, and hopefully, because we don't understand this, it might make some sense to people. And so that has happened. There's been some regulators who've done a really good job, and who have gone out and built sensible frameworks and consulted with various different parts of the industry to get this right. And I think most of them, if you look at the layers of player protection and how do you put markers of harm in place, how do you make sure that players aren't gambling beyond their means, and that checks, if you kind of average it out, I think there's quite a good job done. There's obviously room for improvement with some or many of them, but actually the enemy of innovation has been the fact that most of these regulated markets have happened sort of in a sequential order. There was the UK, then there was Italy, then there was some stuff happening in other Western European countries. Then there was obviously New Jersey went in 2013, then Pennsylvania, Michigan. And I think there's just been a constant stream of these markets with varying degrees of you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. And what that does is it means that every operator, every game supplier needs to focus their teams, whether it be their front-end portal teams, whether it be their KYC and fraud and risk teams, whether it be payment providers need to be changed, all these different elements that form a B2C platform, all the different bits around game supplier of being able to support the different regulatory requirements. And I think we'll talk about this in a second. All of those things mean that you're constantly, as a leader within those organizations, going, we really want to go into Pennsylvania for the 1st of July 2019. We really want to get into Brazil for the 1st of January 2025. So you basically have to scrape all your dev resource, all your operational bits, I need to build a new BI model to be able to support this reporting, or whatever it might be. I need to do tax reporting for South Africa. And you just end up with never having a dev team free to do anything apart from adopt new regulation. And there's nothing wrong with the new regulations. It's a constant flow of stuff. And then the UK says we're going to update RTS or LCCP or whatever it might be. Perfect. But there's never a free gap. And as a business, whether you're the B2C, the B2B, or whatever it might be, you need to then make the decision of, do I outsource some of this? Do I bring in a new dev team? Do I increase my cost to be able to support entering new regulated markets and innovating and doing the personalization and bringing in the AI tools to be able to do this and being able to react to affiliation not being allowed in this market and having some new marketing tool and flow. So it's a trade-off, and it's a constant prioritization call by all of those organizations as to what do I do. And I think, unfortunately, as a sector on the whole, we have let the innovation, in inverted commas, we've let the personalization, we've let the player experience on the entertainment front be neglected because we've all been doing all those bits to support entering new markets and changes to existing markets.
This is where RiskCherry comes in, right?
To some degree, and I think there's a much wider part to this, but we definitely come in to help out with some of these parts. Yeah.
Tell us exactly what problems you're solving and for who.
Okay, so as I've talked about, my background has been across many B2C and B2B organizations, and a lot of the core team that are working with me also worked in game studios. So as a game studio, I had interacted with and was the client of many of the test houses, test laboratories out there. I put many products through certification and audit for up to 30 regulated markets. And we looked at it and thought, there's some out there who do a better job than others. There's some out there who do X, Y, and Z. But actually, as a test lab that truly understands what a game studio is doing and why, there isn't a great match for that. And that was kind of the starting position. And we said that as a game studio, we could do this better. We could look at it from a technology perspective and say, how do we, in sort of two ways, build systems for us to be able to test, inspect, certify, audit iGaming content platforms, RGSs, etc., RNGs, and do this in the best possible way for us within the realms of the ISO accreditation, the regulatory needs and standards that we need to have. How do we do that? And then if we flip it around and go, well, we understand that the game studio side really, really well. We've done this for years. We've built hundreds of games for 25, 30 regulated markets. How do we build a system that supports the game studios? How do we cut out all the wasted effort, all the wasted time? How do we build a solution that's intuitive for them to use? And so we are solving the problem of how do we build something that is highly efficient for a game studio to be able to come in, place an order, get their content, platform, etc., certified, inspected, signed off against all those regulatory standards in the simplest possible way, whilst meeting all the requirements, all the regulation, us hitting our sort of obligatory needs on the ISO side. But how do we build something that is as streamlined as possible?
One of the interesting concepts you talk about is certification made simple, but the red tape in the industry definitely doesn't make it simple. Is there a way, a process, something that you can tell us of how you actually make this philosophy real without giving away any trade secrets, of course?
So yeah, it's a great question. I think what was happening in the past was that game studios development, QA, compliance resource was just being eaten up by having to answer questions via email, by getting Excel sheets later, by a test lab sending you every couple of days a PDF export of what the bugs are. And we're like, how do we simplify these things? How do we make that as easy as possible whilst making sure that everything is audited, certified, inspected in the right way? So that's where we came in, and we said, look, we're experts on one thing, we understand the other. How do we bring it all together and build the right solution that supports people now? Really, it's about us looking at it from a how do we leverage tooling, technology, and sort of using our experience to map all these things together. And it's for the certification made simple is not just about something we say to our clients, to the game studio. It's about something we want them to do. And I think going back to the Paddy Power days, something I learned at Paddy Power is if you want to be seen as a fun entertainment company, as Paddy Power pitched itself back in 2012, 2013 to the player, you need to have that environment and that mindset in the office. And that's something I learned really early on. So the certification made simple thing, when our teams in Malta, in Bulgaria, etc., are doing their daily work, every task we do, we think, is that as simple as possible for the client? Am I making this within the realms of the accreditation, the ISOs and the standards and everything else, am I making this as easy as we possibly can for our client? And if the answer is no, then we think, how do we make that better? How do we simplify that? And also, when someone's sat there doing their job, it's like, am I doing things in the simplest possible way? Could I make this simpler? And what this ends up with is a mindset internally of always looking to incrementally improve processes, systems, tooling, documentation, whatever it might be. So it's the sum of all parts of us continually looking at what we do, never being happy with what we do today being the same thing that we do tomorrow. And we have that mindset. So we're continually evolving, building new tools. And a lot of people will see that I'm constantly talking about releasing new features, new functionality to our client-facing portal, releasing new AI tool assistants internally. And that's about certification made simple. How do we make something better consistently and consistently change that? And that's what we're all about, really.
Looking back at all your time with RiskCherry up until this point, what do you feel has been the greatest accomplishment?
So there's two. Well, actually, there's three, and I want to list all three. So one is the speed at which the team got the initial ISO accreditations and started to become an operational business. The second was obtaining our UK Gambling Commission test house approval back in 2023, which came very quickly after we became operational. And that was really a catalyst for a lot of growth. And then the third one was getting our accreditation and approval in Brazil. And that really this year has allowed us to expand massively, to onboard a vast number of new clients and to support a wider range of markets. So for me, it's all about market access and getting those markets. There are another couple of core key markets that we're about to tick off, and hopefully those will be the catalyst for the next sort of step change within the business. But yeah, getting live in the UK and Brazil are definitely the top things for this business so far.
If a player were to look at all the requirements to certify just one game, what do you think would surprise them most?
Yeah, good question. I think but I think this is more than players. I think if we turn around to most people within a casino operator, or a lot of people who are outside technical compliance within a game studio, I think they would be as surprised as a player who's playing on that casino game. I think the level to which a game is tested and inspected, and whether that's RiskCherry doing it or one of our competitors and other people in the space doing it, the degree to which the source code is analyzed, the degree to which the maths is checked, the number of hundreds of millions or billions of spins that are put through those games, both in testing by the studio and by the laboratory, to make sure that the RTPs that are stated are the RTPs being hit, the level to which player protection and controls are checked, the levels which we're looking at the game rules, help files, pay tables, etc., and making sure that when someone says, when these symbols land, this is what's going to happen, and this is the probability, and this is the hit rate, and this is this, etc., etc. I think players especially would be very surprised, but also I think a lot of people in game studios and casino operators would also be surprised at it. And some markets have hundreds of test cases per game and require us to look very much in depth at the back end, at the maths, at what is coming from the simulated rounds that are put out, and then also all the front end checks. And when you're talking about doing this across 20, 25 regulated markets, all with different degrees of standards and different requirements, which then map onto different test cases, I think how we have done it is we've mapped all those things together, and we say, look, this requirement in the UK is the same as this one in Ontario, as Brazil, and obviously different markets have a different way of expressing that, but there's a lot of similarities. And then there's a delta to market specific player protection, or a different focus on IT security, or a different focus on change management. I think people would be really surprised at the level to which every test house looks at this, to which every game studio has to adhere to meet the requirements in every market. And it's a very, very in-depth process. And I don't think there's many people out there who really understand what it means to certify a game.
And based on that, I think we might have a future episode to tell details.
Great, happy to.
Rob, I don't want to let you go without asking you the magic question. How would you like to be remembered in iGaming history?
So that's a very good but difficult question.
I get the same reaction from everybody else.
I would love to be seen as someone who has helped a number of businesses scale. I would like to be seen and remembered as someone trusted within the sector, and someone who has been authentic and has been available, and all the things I talk about in terms of my leadership. And I think really I want to leave this industry whenever that is. I've tried once before and got dragged back in. You can never leave. But if I do leave the industry, I would love to be seen as someone leaving it in a better place than what I found it. So I think that for me is really, really is the thing that I want to be seen as.
And I am convinced that based on the work you're doing now, that is going to be the case.
Thank you. Hopefully.
Rob, it has been an absolute pleasure having you. Thank you for dedicating your time to this. To everybody watching, thank you for watching. We will leave Rob's details in the description. Stay tuned for more from iGaming history. Thank you very much.
Thank you.